Hello, everybody. Tracy Mrs. JDog Flanagan with you here today. I'm the co-founder and senior vice president of JDog Brands. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Tactical Treasures Podcast, sponsored by the JDog Foundation. Our podcast gives the military community a voice in the veteran space to share their stories of service, how they continue to make a difference in civilian life, and they share with me a tactical treasure that has shaped their journey in their military career, business, or life. Today, I am honored to speak with Eddie Molina, who is a U.S. Army veteran who served during Operation Iraqi Freedom. Today, he is a prominent writer and interviewer known for his deep dive conversations with social media influencers and high profile figures across the veteran, first responder, and law enforcement communities. His work is frequently featured on major platforms like Law Enforcement Today, the nation's largest pro-LEO media organization, reaching millions of readers. He is now the founder and editor of Homeland Defender magazine. Whether he's discussing leadership tactics or breaking the stigma around mental health, Eddie's mission is to share the authentic stories of those within our hero communities. Hello, Eddie. Welcome to Tactical Treasures Podcast. Thank you so much for your service to our country.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to getting to some deep topics with you.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so we have a lot to discuss today. You're
Yeah.
doing a lot of stuff in the military space as a journalist and interviewer. However, I would like to ask you, what inspired you to join the Army?
You know what? Back in the mid to late '90s, my brother joined, and
Mm,
I went to go visit him at Fort Stewart, right outside Savannah, Georgia. And we would take me and the guys would jump in the car and take a few trips down there, to hang out. It was a good social scene, and I kind of liked the atmosphere. I liked the environment. I kind of liked the just the whole vibe of it all. Not just
mhm,
hanging out in the city, but like the barracks and being on post as well. So that's what started it, and then from there, the rest was history.
mm, that's great. Um, So, is there a particular moment or aspect from your service that was impactful in a positive way for you?
Um, I would say the second time around, and what I mean by that was I ended up joining the National Guard, the Army National Guard, because at the time, right around that time frame, late '90s, I was interested in the military, but I also didn't want to go active duty. And at the time, I was delivering pizzas like a lot of teenagers do, and I was listening to the commercials over and over again about joining the National Guard. And I was like, let me look into that, and it was kind of a good compromise, and that was part-time service. So you're in the military, but you're not full-time all day every day, just 1 week in a month. But for the first couple of years, I was not a good soldier. I was missing drills, I was missing training, and at some point they let me go. And this is all before 9/11, so they were pretty flexible. They weren't as hardcore as they were after 9/11 for obvious reasons.
Mm,
So I would say the enlightening moment to answer your question was when I matured a few years later. I decided I need to go back and do things right. I need to reenlist. I need to reserve. I need to take whatever programs and training that came up that was available, and I owe them. So that's what was my enlightening moment, was going back the second time, and I did a lot with it.
oh wow. You probably were too immature when you first joined,
Yeah.
and I love that you had a desire to get a redo, so to speak, and kind of make it right and do it the right way. That's amazing. I love
Yeah, and
that.
I believe in second chances. I believe in
Yeah.
and I saw that because when I went back into the National Guard, the opportunity for OCS to become an officer came up, and I was eligible because of my college. As I rose through the ranks in that way, I saw the younger troops come up, 18, 19 years old, and going through the same thing, and I had a more heart for that. I was like, listen, I get it, I understand it. So I wanted to see them grow and watch them, kind of like children. Like, they're gonna fall, you just have to help them get back up and help them find their way.
Wow, yeah. So your experience probably lent yourself to being a really good mentor for
Yeah,
them.
Yeah, you can say that. And I was obsessed with the leadership topic because as an officer in the military, as anyone knows,
Hmm.
it's all leadership, and what you do and don't do has resonates to everyone else, and it impacts performance overall.
Sure, sure, yeah. Um, so after your service, you get out, you transition out. And I know you wrote a book, correct? Was that kind of your first steps when you got out, or did you go right into journalism right away and start interviewing? What was that like for you?
Well, at the time when I got back from the deployment to Iraq, I had a government job, so I went back to it. And it was, as government is very bureaucratic, very systematic, and everything's tightly controlled as you would expect. And going through my military experience, being a lower ranking, an officer, but a line level officer in
Hmm.
charge, I would see my colleagues, my coworkers, and my employment get promoted to roles of supervision that they weren't before. So they're going from a regular ground floor per se to now being in charge of other people. And I would see them make the same mistakes as a new leader makes, like the micromanaging, overbearing, things like that, getting too involved with the day to day stuff. So it occurred to me at some point years later, I'm like, you know what, I thought it was common sense, this leadership stuff, but I'm like, you know what, I went through that. So I was like, I've been right by the time I decided to write that book, um, The Beginner's Guide to Leadership. It was more just writing my experiences to help someone else who's just starting off and kind of needs to know at least the basics to get going. But by then, I was already writing separately. It's just I wanted to put my experience and thoughts on paper and put it together for them.
Oh wow. Oh, that's great. And when was your book published?
I lost track, to be honest with you. It was 2019. It was right before COVID, because COVID is like that timeline that kind of puts
Oh
everything.
yeah,
So
right.
it was definitely pre-COVID, but not much sooner than that.
Mm.
By then, I was out of the military 6 years. I've been writing journalism, side type of writing for years. So yeah, it took about 2 years, just a little bit here, a little bit there, and put it together. But yeah, late. I want to say 2019 should be fair when it came out.
Right. Yeah. So you write for a lot of publications. I would love to know how you got started with that. Because I know you write for like law enforcement magazines, correct?
Yeah, the primary one right now is Law Enforcement Today. They're the biggest media publication for law
Hmm.
enforcement first responders in the world, and by far. A buddy of mine, he acquired it and acquired other media and kind of combined it into one big one. And it started in around right after the deployment. I was working in a law enforcement capacity, and there was a local magazine say, "Hey, if you have any content, we're looking for free content." And I was using my GI Bill. I was working the midnight shift, and I was writing while I was working. Actually, I shouldn't say that, but I was. But yeah.
Okay.
Um, I mean, it was casual. I was just hand jamming stuff and helping. My wife was helping me put it all together.
Right.
But with that information, I was like, most of my content is similar to what was being published in this magazine, and it was called the Blue Magazine. Actually, it was called something else at the time. It eventually turned into the Blue Magazine. So I reached out to them through their website. I'm like, hey, I got a ton of stuff. If you want it, it's yours. I'm already writing it anyway for school, so I might as well just give it to you because it covers the same subject, and that's how it blossomed.
Mm. Oh wow. Wow. Um, that's amazing. So, and you do interviews too, correct?
Yeah, yeah,
Do you interview for a particular magazine, or are you attached to? Yeah, I guess that's what I'm asking.
yeah. Well, it started with the Blue Magazine, and then it kind of grew from there. And then I started reaching out to other publications like SOFREP, which is another military magazine, Coffee or Die, which was a Black Rifle Coffee magazine, which they no longer use anymore. And I just reach out to them like, hey, can I write for you guys? And they're like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And it kind of grew from there. And when it turned to the interviews, I was always into philanthropy and helping veterans because, as any veteran knows, they struggle. And I
Mm,
was always involved with nonprofits in sense where I would donate here, donate there, just do what I can like anybody else. And then it occurred to me at some point in that transition, I was like, you know what? I have a platform I could write off of. Why don't I interview nonprofit founders? This way, that'll help at least in some level, it can help other veterans discover that, hey, this nonprofit exists. Because one thing I've learned is I know the VA gets a bad rap, but one of the challenges with the VA is they try to help every veteran on every level, and that spectrum, goes from left to right, from mild to severe. And with
Right.
nonprofit, I consider it like where the VA covers everything, nonprofits like cover a slice of like some veteran in this circumstance. So I'm like, they may not know that this exists, and that slice might be exactly what they need. So then
Right.
I started talking to founders of nonprofit organizations. Like, hey, tell me about your nonprofit. This way I can write about it. And if it's geared towards the veteran law enforcement community, it only makes sense to publish it. This way other people may read it and be like, you know what? That sounds like something I would get into, like whether it's a hunt or a counseling or a fishing trip or something along those lines.
Right.
And that's
And
how that started.
right. And so, and where those interviews of the nonprofits, what magazine would accept that content?
I sprinkled them throughout. It started with
Okay.
the Blue magazine, and then it went from there. I did a couple for Self Rep, and then from there a couple for Coffee or Die. So I would just whoever would take them, and some of them I syndicated, which is, I own it because I wrote it. So I would send them to both, and they would both publish it independently. We
Hmm.
would just change like he spoke to the Blue magazine or whatever. I would just update it to make sense for that particular publication. So sometimes I would
Right.
syndicate it in multiple places.
Yeah. What are some of the nonprofit founders that you've spoken to?
One of my first was I was interested in doing in person. I was like, those are kind of neat because like you can actually
Hmm.
see and feel. And this is really before Zoom took off, so I didn't even know
Right.
about it. And I want to say in 2018, 2019, maybe even 2020. I don't know. No, it was post COVID because I remember them wearing a mask.
Oh
My
gosh.
wife and I
Okay.
we drove to Maryland because we have friends that live outside DC. And I was like, you know what? I went on Facebook. I went to one of those veteran groups. I'm like, hey, is there a nonprofit that I could like to write about? Do you have any suggestions? And somebody recommended Fields for Valor Farms. And I looked
Hmm.
them up and I reached out. I'm like, hey, I'd like to know more about it. We happened, and I found out that it was in Maryland, which was close to where we're going anyway. So I'm like, that's perfect. Let me go explore that. And it was in Brandywine, Maryland. My wife went and I went down there. We spoke to the founder, and he walked us through the entire process. And his story was moving in a sense that it really helped even my wife understand post traumatic stress because, I knew of it, of course, I have a little bit of it myself. My wife is a civilian, so for
Hmm.
her, it's a little bit different. So he went to his story about how he was an intelligence officer, did 12 years active duty, and he just, to date, he still had the worst form, the most severe case of post traumatic stress that I've talked to since. And I've
Oh
talked to a lot
wow.
of people. And he had
Hmm.
to be inpatient therapy for months, to kind of come out of it and discovered farming helped him. It also helped veterans because now he's bringing in other veterans to teach them how to farm. And he's also taking all that extra food, bringing it to DC, and here you go. We have this extra stuff, and so for him, it saved his life. Um,
Wow.
but it was moving in a sense that at the time he was just starting. He didn't
Right.
know what he was doing. He was having crops grow on top of crops. Like he had no experience.
Hmm.
And his story got picked up really recently. I want to say about a year ago through AARP, which they have a YouTube channel. And they do these mini documentaries, like a 15-minute piece. And I
Hmm.
saw his interview there, and I could tell the clear difference in his posture, his demeanor, from when I spoke to him 4, 5, 6 years ago to that
Right.
documentary. I was like, wow, he's changed. And I sent that to my wife too. I'm like, you gotta, because she remembers she was there.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
she was blown away by the change.
Yeah. It's amazing. And there's so many nonprofits out there that are actual resources for veterans. And I've spoken myself to a lot of them. I've had them on this podcast, and what I think is not there isn't one. nonprofit that's going to work for every single veteran. They each have to find, what is going to help heal. Hello, viewers and listeners. The JDog Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit whose mission is to prevent veteran suicide and heal veterans' mental health and PTS. 100% of all proceeds goes directly to the organizations we are partnered with. If you go to jdogfoundation.org, you can learn more about our mission, donate, and if you are in need of help, please dial 988. Our motto, saving lives one veteran at a time. Check us out, jdogfoundation.org. It might be equine therapy or it might be farming. You never know. But it's so great to know that there's so many resources out there.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I deduced it all to. I'm like, there's so many resources out there, but how do people find them? Like, how do you
Right.
discover that
Yeah.
this nonprofit is worth driving 6 hours to go spend a weekend there? You don't, there's only
You
one way
don't.
is awareness.
Yeah. Awareness. Yeah. So I in your bio, I also read that you are the founder of Homeland Defender magazine. So, so you have your own magazine now?
You know what? I'm gonna change that wording to not founder, but founding. I'm in the process of starting it.
Oh, okay.
And this is the first time I'm publicly mentioning it, but I have it all set up and where it's going to be another resource and another channel and another avenue that's going to focus on veteran and first responder topics that is going to be less political and more focused on day-to-day useful tangible information that's going to be spread. So yes, I am starting that very
Oh,
soon,
wow.
and it's almost
Oh,
due to get
how
officially launched, but everything's in place.
oh, wow. How exciting. And who do you hope will pick up the magazine?
I like the online format because it's easy to share. So kind of like
Okay.
when you write about a nonprofit organization, someone says, you know what, I resonate with that, I connect with it. If they read an article, I resonate and connect with it, they'll share it. So
Hmm.
it is a form of a resource. So if it starts off, it's going to start off small. It's just me, but if
Right.
it resonates with one person and they share it to two and so on and so on, and that's how I plan to build it. But it's really an accumulation of all the experience, all the interviews, all the knowledge, everything I've picked up, the writing, the everything, all being kind of channeled into this one resource, and that's how I'm looking at it. Because I love writing for law enforcement today, but I don't. It's not mine, so I don't have full creative
Sure.
capabilities,
Yeah.
which I'm okay with. But I want to kind of control it so I can focus it more as a resource for people instead of just information.
Right. Right. I love it. I can't wait to see how it launches, and that's exciting.
It is. Yes, I'm excited too, and I'm really looking forward to getting the word out because it's, I watch these podcasts and they're great and all, they're all informative, but I want to do more. I want to add to it, and
Right.
I think there's when you're sharing information to help people, there can never be enough. Even though someone can argue it's saturated here, there, and the other, but it's still another channel, and that's what I'm
Right.
focusing
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. This is great. I love what you're doing, and I love how, through journalism and interviewing, how you're giving back and helping the veteran community find resources. I think it's amazing. But Eddie, we are the Tactical Treasures podcast. So we've come to the time in our podcast where I have to ask you, what is your tactical treasure that you would love to share with us today?
on. You know what? I'm gonna say that in terms of the topic we're discussing with, a lot of it is mental health. Know that no one is perfect. And one thing I've kind of come to understand is that everyone is susceptible to mental health challenges, whether it's in the military, as a first responder, or even as a domestic violence survivor. We're all one and the same. So one thing I tell people is that you're not invincible no matter how tough you think you are.
Mhm.
Things can change you, and just be aware of those changes. And that's something that I used to see with younger veterans. I'm like, hey, you think you're tough? You want to go shooting and want to go kill guys? And I was like, all right. and my son is going through that phase now, and he's only 12. I'm like, it'll still change you. So remember and ground
Mhm.
yourself that be aware of it because no matter how prepared you think you are, you have to be prepared for the change that comes with it. So I want everyone to know that you're human
Right.
just like anybody else, and you're susceptible just like anybody else. It doesn't mean it has to be bad or a negative experience. It just has to be something you have to be aware of, and that's the start of, I would say, being in a good, healthy balance.
Right. Right. I love that. That's an awesome tactical treasure, and it's great advice too, because I think we all think we need to be strong, especially veterans. You know, you're called to a great service, and unfortunately, it's okay to not be strong. And it's
Right.
okay to say, you know what, I'm not invincible. I see things, I can't unsee them, you know. So I love that tactical treasure that you kind of keep close to your heart and in your mind because it's important. It's true.
Yeah, and my son's going through a phase where he's watching a lot of war movies. So now I'm introducing him to older content and nothing gruesome or anything like that, but more
Right.
action. And now he's glamorizing it. So now I'm like, all right, do I want to go down that road as well? So, that's a
Yeah.
challenge of being a parent. Um,
Right.
and
Sure.
that's something that I'll be monitoring and tell him, and I keep him grounded. I'm like, listen, I know plenty of people. And sometimes I refer to like, do you know this guy? And you remember him? He had this experience. So I give him real world examples,
Mm-hmm.
the struggle afterwards. Nothing
Yeah.
too shocking, nothing that's going to scare him, but
Right.
let him know, like, hey, because we're very heavily involved with our VFW, and I know a lot of veterans here. They struggle in their own way, and he's getting to know the folks, the veterans that kind of hang out here. So I use those as references. Hey, this guy, his experience is, he ran into, for example, my buddy. He was telling me he was Air Force veteran, and when he was in Iraq, they were at a the main base where all the KIA ended up before they got shipped off back home. So he had to deal with that every day, multiple times a day. They had to, do a ceremony, and he just said one was too many, and he just kind of
Yeah.
lost it in a
Right.
sense. But I
Yeah.
use that story for my son. I'm like, hey, you remember Mr. Ty? And he's like, yeah, of course. So I'm like, all right, well, here's a little bit about his story, and he found the
Yeah.
VFW to be a source of healing for him.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's good. And as he gets older, I mean, you're an Iraqi war veteran yourself, so I'm sure, there'll be a time where you may share as well. Um,
You know
yeah.
what? It's funny you say.
Educating can be tough though.
Yeah, and I don't know if funny is the word, but it's interesting you say that because I do share my Iraq stories because mine
Mm.
is not nearly as bad as what other guys have gone through, and that's part of my motivation.
Right.
I'm like, you know, my mission at the time was to be the supervisor of a detainee facility, a detention facility for POWs. But it was really watered down, and they were it was dealing with old guys, and they were not violent in any way. So I had
Mm.
it pretty easy in that sense.
Right.
But I know my colleagues, they have a much different story to tell. And that's kind of
Mm.
one thing that motivates me. I'm like, in a sense, it almost seems unfair. Like, why does this person have to have it so easy and this person have to have it so rough? So I feel
Mm.
like a sense of duty and responsibility to kind of compensate for that just from hearing the other stories. And I want to be a source of some type of a solution to it all. So
Right.
I tell people,
Right.
yeah, my deployment was not heroics. I wasn't kicking doors down. I wasn't, dodging bullets per se. Yeah, there were moments here and there, but they were pale in comparison to what others have gone through. And I feel, like I said, a responsibility to compensate for that in a sense of being a source of help for some people.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Um, so that's probably a good segue into my next question, Eddie. Any advice for fellow veterans struggling post service?
I would say be a man or be a woman. Talk to somebody.
Mm.
I'm trying to find a way to make it cool in a sense, and by that is retelling people's stories of, you know, service followed by the challenge, followed by the adversity, followed by breaking out of it. And so what I've focused on doing was speaking to a lot of high profile veterans who have gone and done some crazy missions, and then focus on that, but also focus on, you know, the journey home and dealing with the post traumatic stress afterwards that a lot of them have come out. And I can only speak to those who made it. How many haven't?
Hmm.
That, you know, you just never hear their story.
Right.
So I'm trying to make it, what's the word, like cool in a sense to go get help. You know, like it's you're really defining yourself as a responsible tough because you are admitting it, as opposed
Right.
to, you know, the old stigma, which was if you're going for help, you're showing weakness. I'm trying to change that tide to make it if you're going for help, you're showing strength.
Right.
So
Yeah.
and that's been a focus of some of my interviews, which was interviewing these high level veterans, getting their story and talking about their story of recovery, not just the heroics that, you know, the Rambo stuff, but the what comes after that.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's great. That's great advice. Yeah. There's strength in admitting that, you need help.
Yeah, and
Because
one
because
example.
you're important, right? You're important, and you need to be here, right?
Yeah, and one example I use one of my earlier interviews. A gentleman I ran to on Facebook by the name of Tom Satterley. He was an author, a Delta Force guy. He was part of the Battle of Mogadishu, as retold in Black Hawk Down. Then he
Mm-hmm.
was in charge of Delta Force teams hunting down the um, Iraq's deck of cards, like the leadership. So that was his career in a sense, which spanned a 20 plus year career of being in the highest level
Right.
military unit on the planet, with no exaggeration. And he struggled afterwards. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so when I picked up his book, I ran into him on Facebook. I'm like, hey, I'll get your book. You know, after we're done reading, you know, maybe we could talk about it and do an interview. He's like, yeah, sure, why not? And that was 2021, give or take. And as I'm reading his book, you know, I'm expecting the Rambo heroics, like I did this, that, and the other. I'm like, all right. And there is some of that. But he only added that so that he could talk about, you know, just to make it interesting. But he also, you
Mm-hmm.
know, combined that with the struggle afterwards, you know, his
Right.
civilian side of it and how he almost took his own life and, you know, how he broke out of it. And it's still a work in progress. It's never going to be, you know,
Right. Yeah.
easy. Um, but you know, I went into it thinking, oh, this is going to be a cool shoot 'em up Rambo story, and it was more about the healing than it was about that. It was just a good blend of
Right.
it. And I'm like, you know, he was one of my first interviews, and I spoke about that part. We spoke about both the heroics and the struggle. And I was like, you know what? If this guy is man enough to talk about it, to admit his faults, his flaws, his mistakes as a human being and a husband, and come out of it, I'm like, anybody can do it. So I use his
Right.
story as like an anchor, and I plan on continuing to do more guys like that. Where I'm like, look, you're talking about like the cream of the crop. However, they
Right.
struggle too, and they're
Yeah.
admitting and they're talking about it. So you can do the same and mimic that same attitude. So yeah,
Right.
I'm trying to change that dynamic, which it's, you know, I'm not a one man out. It's not just me. You know, the stigma is
Right.
slowly coming down. Um,
Yeah.
but it's something that takes people like yourself, like me, and like many of us to continue talking about it, writing about it, speaking about it, sharing those stories, and it all
Right.
starts
Sure.
at this level.
Sure. Yeah. Because it can give others hope
Yeah.
that not only is it okay to talk about it, but it's okay to not be okay and to reach out for help, right?
Yeah, and I'm working on an article I want to put together where I talk to guys like him, but little snippets of their story because I know I see it today now. Like they're the younger generation, they're coming up with that same "I'm too tough for any problems" attitude,
Sure.
both on the
Yeah.
law enforcement side and on the military side. I'm like, all right, you
Mm-hmm.
think so? Here's a list of the most high profile guys you know that all share the same similar stories of mental health challenges. If you think you can bypass that, you've got something coming.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm
Um,
working on that. I'm going to get all these high profile guys in one article to submit a few statements, just to be like, here's the top seven most high profile people in the world that are in
right,
the space you're in, so they can admit it. At least be prepared. So if they're not going through anything now, maybe they'll remember it down the road.
right, right. I love that. Eddie, this has been amazing. Thank you for sharing everything and for all that you're doing and really, um, trying to use journalism and interviewing and writing as a way to, make a difference in the veteran first responder community. Um, but before you go, can you tell us where people can find and connect with you, and where they can read your publications and maybe listen to some of your interviews?
You know what? I don't publish the actual interviews. I only publish the written version of them.
Oh, okay.
I like to tell people I have a face for radio, so I don't actually publish them. I just take them and make the articles out of them. But I do have them,
Okay.
so that has come across my way. People keep telling me I should just publish them. Why not? And I published a couple in the beginning. I'm like, it's just easier writing about it.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's fine. Where can people read those interviews?
my personal website, which is actually my name, eddiemolina.com. That's what I have. I was fortunate to get that website URL somehow, and
Right? Yeah.
I uploaded and I recreated it recently, so it's still relatively new. But that's where I'll
Hmm.
be posting all these articles, and I'm going to link it into the connected with the Homeland Defender magazine as well as a shared dual thing. But that's where you'll see a compilation of interesting interviews, both on the mental health side, both on the fun, cool side, um, and everything in between. So they
Right.
can go
And
there at
and
com.
if people think they have a cool story that they say, "Hey, you want to interview me?" Um, or I have a cool story, would you like to write about it? Can they contact you on your website?
Yeah, there is a contact link there. It goes
Okay.
through the email system, and I'll eventually get it. But yeah, they can absolutely. And a lot of the articles I do come from that, come from people just reaching out randomly. And sometimes I'm like, this is an amazing story. How has nobody told it?
Yeah,
But
right.
it's
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard if you're a veteran coming out and you have this crazy story like you're not a professional journalist. You don't know that sort.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
defined by your service. Why would you know how to get
Hmm.
it out there? And I'm just one means. And yeah, if they want to, they can always reach out and love to hear it.
Okay. Great. That's great. We'll be sure to get the word out about that. Eddie, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time today and for coming on. And you're doing great stuff. I'm excited to see how Homeland Defender magazine takes off. Good luck with that.
Yes, absolutely. Oh no, certainly keep you posted.
Okay. Take care. God bless. Thank you. Hello, viewers and listeners. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Tactical Treasures, where we've just finished up a conversation with Eddie Molina, who is an Army Iraq War veteran, author, and journalist dedicated to uplifting the military, law enforcement, and first responder communities. As a prominent voice for major outlets like Law Enforcement Today, Coffee or Die magazine, and the Havoc Journal, Eddie is well known for his insightful interviews with high-profile figures, including retired Navy SEALs Jason Redman and Eddie Gallagher. Beyond journalism, he is the author of A Beginner's Guide to Leadership, where he bridges the gap between military discipline and modern organizational management to help others build high-performing teams. A passionate advocate for mental health and philanthropy, Eddie uses his platform to champion veteran-owned businesses and nonprofit organizations, ensuring the stories and needs of the hero community remain at the forefront. To learn more, go to eddiemolina.com. Again, thanks for joining us, and don't forget you can find Tactical Treasures Podcast on all your favorite podcast platforms, on our website, tacticaltreasurespodcast.com, as well as our dedicated YouTube channel As an official radio partner, Tactical Treasures is airing on Reese Across America Radio on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. and Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern for the encore. You can also find Reese Across America Radio on the iHeartRadio app, the Odyssey app, and the TuneIn app. JDog is honored to be an official Reese Across America sponsorship group. When you sponsor a $17 Veterans Wreath through our group, $5 goes straight to the JDog Foundation to help heal our heroes. Your contribution directly supports our mission to prevent veteran suicide and provide lasting mental health and PTS resources. You can donate right now at reacheacrossamerica.org/JDog. Again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again on another podcast real soon. Bye-bye now.